Hello everyone and welcome to my channel, and out of left field is a painting of a Space Marine scout. Interesting story how this happened. So this all began with me getting robbed over the counter buying some paints at GW, paying $24 for a single spray can for a future project. Oh my god. And it was the beginning of the month and the guy was like, hey, here's a free model. I was like, what? I was like, how long have you been doing this? Since the end of COVID. It's like, I've come here many times, how come I've never seen this? Well, we sell out almost immediately. I was like, oh my god. So, as a good break from the GSC and other stuff, I wanted to be able to try some techniques and stuff that I've been looking at and stuff. So here's a good opportunity to practice. And I put a community poll out on my YouTube, and just to put out a bunch of different color schemes because I was indecisive. And the vast majority voted for Blood Angels, despite me having actually a lot of Blood Angel paint jobs on this channel. Alright, so let's do the Space Marine Scout now. Here's all the paints and stuff I used, as well as, and all the materials for his basing. So, I assembled up to the point where we get in the way of painting, which is basically his gun and arms are attached, and his body is fully assembled. Alright, with AK Interactive, Dark Earth, Asphalt, as well as AK Puddles, and Agrax Earthshade and Xandri Dust, which I actually don't think I use. But anyway, so I want to focus on his base first, because when I'm interested in a project, I have the most focus and energy, and so I want to get the bases out of the way, because if I do them last, they're going to look absolutely terrible and tacked on. So first, oh, I forgot to show. Also, I have a bunch of little rocks, and I have some gel glue because it's easy to work with. So basically, what I do is I want to create sort of a rocky puddle and asphalt in there, basically like a giant pothole. So I apply some the gel glue, and then I apply the rocks on there, and then I scoot it with my fingers to create sort of an edge on one part. Then I take the asphalt, and then I place it along the other side to create the other side of the hole, and then cover some of the rocks with it. This requires overnight to dry and harden fully before I can do any real work, but after like an hour or so I can apply like a little bit more asphalt on it to make it a thick layer. And then I have to let it go overnight. And then once that is done, I then take AK Dark Earth and fill in the hole lightly with it, just so I know there's enough color. And then once that's done, the AK Puddles, essentially what I do is I add color to it, and I take the Xandri just a little bit and mix it with the AK Puddles to create the muddy water, and then I fill it in on the base layer. And then after that, what I do is, once it dries, usually with the help of a hairdryer, I then fill in the rest with the pure AK Puddles. I wanted the bottom to be dark and murky, and the top to be a bit more watery. You know how like stuff separates. Yeah. And once that's done, a little bit of Agrax Earthshade streaks here and there, and yeah, and it's pretty much good. Alright, so before painting, I want to quickly go over my idea and process going through. So I'm going to start with the pants, because there are cloth type pants, and as well I'm going to use stippling, which is a bit messy. It's hard to be accurate with it, and so I want to focus on them first because they'll mess up the surrounding area or dirty it, and it'll be easier to start with them and then adapt as I go. So we're going to start with the pants first, then go to the boots, then armor, and then probably small details last, and the head last because I kind of touch it on the head. Alright, with Carrack Stone, Gorthor Brown, Rakarth Flesh, and Pallid Witch Flesh, we're going to paint the pants. So we're going to use stippling. But first we're going to start with the base layer of Carrack Stone as our foundation color on the pants. Then we're going to take Gorthor Brown and we're going to paint directly into the folds and recesses. Then we're going to turn the Gorthor Brown into a wash. And then we're going to apply like 2 coats of it, because a thinner is better. Then once that fully dries, we will then go back with Carrack Stone, and I will take a dry brush. I'm using the Artist Opus ones, and then I just stipple all over. Now, one thing to point out is it wasn't able to get really into the recesses, so this is something I do actually off camera later, I sort of feather in with a regular brush because I just couldn't reach in with the brush I used for this. Essentially, like Gorthor Brown, that stuff should only be like less than 5%. You want to make sure that it's not really visible, just like some thin lines that feather into the recesses and stuff. So once we do the Carrick Stone layer, we then go with Rakarth Flesh, and then we stipple all over, focusing maybe covering like 80 to 90% of the legs with this, focusing on the more raised areas. And then once it's done, we're going to do a 1-to-1-ish of Rakarth and Pallid Witch Flesh, and then highlighting it, painting probably like 60 to 70% of it, the more raised areas, and finally going with Pallid Witch Flesh on the most raised areas and edges and stuff. And it turned to work out pretty well, and with a little bit of Pallid Witch Flesh and straight lines here and there on the most prominent folds and stuff, worked pretty well. And you could do some lines with Rakarth Flesh on the folds as well, and then dot them with Pallid Witch Flesh. It depends. It's a bit of a back and forth. I'm still learning how to do this, so it's a bit iffy, but the end result is a very textured look. It looked like cloth. It did look like cloth, and I feel like it had better blends than I was expecting. Oh, and at the very end, to help tie all the colors together, I do another wash of Gorthor Brown, very thin, all over to help tie them together. And this is after a bit of the extra blending I did to remove the concentrated areas of Gorthor Brown in the recesses. Alright, with Evil Sun Scarlet, Corn Red, Wild Rider's Red, Troll Slayer Orange, and Fire Dragon Bright, I do the red armor. So essentially what I do is Evil Sun Scarlet all over. Then I take a Corn Red, and then as a wash, I apply it all over, and then I re-highlight with Evil Sun Scarlet. And then what I do is I do a series of washes. How I do this is I take Corn Red and I apply it in the lower area where the shadow would be, a thin layer. Then I took Wild Rider Red and I applied a thin layer on the top half to sort of create like some layers of color transition. I did this once before with the Nurgle Demon Prince, but I am noticing that Wild Rider Red somehow doesn't do well with this. And I tried the same thing with Troll Slayer Orange as a brighter highlight, a thin layer of it on the most raised areas, and then I did edging highlights on all the edges of Troll Slayer Orange, and then a finer highlight on the most, like the top half raised areas of Fire Dragon Bright. And then I tried to tie the thing together with another thin layer of Corn Red, but so reds are a little strange. The Wild Rider Red and Troll Slayer Orange and Dragon Bright came out chalky when I used them in thin washes and stuff, and I was like, okay, I could probably manage it when I do my my seals, my varnishes and stuff, because then that'll help fix the chalkiness and stuff. And that's what I was thinking going forward. But it's not that good. But I do move on from here. Alright, now on to the boots. With Corvus Black, Eshin Grey, and Dawnstone, we're going to paint their black boots. So, essentially, Corvus Black is a base layer. Then we're going to take Eshin Grey with a brush, and we're going to highlight the basically 90-95% of the boots, except for the recesses or the parts where like raised areas connect the boot. It's going to be covered in Eshin Grey. Then I took Dawnstone and dry brush, and I just stippled all over, trying my best not to get into the recesses. And then once that's done, I took Dawnstone again and highlighted all the sharp edges of the boot. Then I took Corvus Black, created a wash with it, and then reapplied it to help blend everything together, make it tie it together, and fix any color transitions. And it turned out pretty well. Then I took Dawnstone again and re-highlighted the most raised sharp edges and stuff. And it came out really well. The stippling really does add like a texture and character to the model. Now look at the model. look at the boots, look at the pants, and then look at the armor. The armor is passable, but the pants and the boots are of a higher quality in comparison, and I mean, what can I say? The armor is not bad per se, but it's just like, it looks worse than the rest. So we're going to redo the armor. Okay, with Corn Red, Evil Sun Scarlet, Wild Rider Red, Troll Slayer Orange, and Fire Dragon Bright, I'm going to redo the armor. So first we start off with Evil Sun Scarlet as a base layer. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take Wild Rider Red and the stippling, and we're going to cover like 80% of the armor on each section. The bottom 20% will be the pure Corn Red, and the rest going up will be stippled with Wild Rider Red. Or, no, the base layer is Evil Sun Scarlet, sorry. And Wild Rider Red will cover sort of a crescent shape. It's not like a sharp line, but it's like, it goes a little bit into where the Evil Sun Scarlet is, and then dips back out. Then we're going to go with Troll Slayer and do the same thing, sort of halfway. And then we will then do a hard highlight on all the appropriate edges with Troll Slayer Orange. Then we will take Corn Red and create a thin wash, very thin because the red is very overpowering and pigmented, and we'll apply it all over to help tie the colors together and add shadow into the recesses. Then we'll go back with Fire Dragon Bright and highlight most raised areas, edges, and stuff, and in the end, it looks better. I need to find a way to take better pictures, or pictures maybe more at a distance, because these close-up zooms, it doesn't look as good. But essentially, the armor seems more textured, the blending of the colors seems far better. This did not take that much time or focus. I had to slow down a bit to make sure I didn't accidentally stipple on the other places, and I had to use a very small dry brush for it. But yeah. Better texture, better color transitions, and relatively not that long. Alright, with Corvus Black, Eshin Green, Dawnstone, and Abaddon Black, we're going to paint, the gun. And so, start with the base layer of Corvus Black all over. Eshin Gray, we're going to paint the flat plates and the like little things that stick out of it. And then Dawnstone, we're just going to do a simple highlight along the edges. And then once that is done, we're going to take Abaddon Block on a very thin wash because it's very pigmented, and cover it all over to add depth to the recesses. If you want, you can re-highlight some areas with Dawnstone and such. But yeah, I find that it looks better than without metal, and because they're a scout, I would assume they wouldn't want anything flashing in the distance, so their color scheme will be pretty muted. Also, the gloves were painted at the same time as the boots and in the same manner. Forgot to mention that. Alright, with Corvus Black, Eshin Gray, Dawnstone, and Administrative Gray, we're going to paint the, I forgot what it's called. The Emperor Seal on their chest. Dang it, I forgot what it's called. But essentially, yeah, continuing that they're scouts, and so they want things to be dark. It's going to be, well, a highlighted gray. So we're going to start off with Corvus Black all over. Eshin Gray, we're going to paint each and every single individual little wing. I did a bit overkill. That's probably not necessary. I could have probably just painted like the half of each of the wings. So there's 2 on each side. So it would have been dark in the core and then lighter towards the edge. And then with Dawnstone, I painted each individual wing. I had to do it twice to make the paint in because I have a very fine brush. And with Administrative Gray, I kind of messed up and I painted the full wing again. I probably should have just painted the second half of each little feather, and so like the middle half would have Dawnstone, or the left half, or the half that's closer to the skull would have Dawnstone, and the edge would have Administrative Gray, but I went a little too overboard. And then I did a wash of Corvus Black all over to help fix any messed up lines. Now here's a thing. So I ended up doing a lot more Administrative Gray because I did mess up a few times, and so if you mess up, you can go back with a wash of Corvus Black to sort of re-add the recesses, depth into the recesses, and then you can re-highlight. So this is a back and forth of, if you mess up, you can fix it with a wash and then re-highlight. Alright, with Mornfang Brown, Rhinox Hide, and XV88. So basically what I did, this is to do their pouches and leather belts. So basically, Mornfang Brown all over. Then I took Rhinox Hide as a wash, a little bit of a thicker wash, and I applied one layer of it, because I just wanted to try it. I'm still experimenting here. So once I did that, I then went back with Mornfang Brown and I stippled all over, which isn't the best for the leather belts because I ended up stippling in the center, so like the center is supposed to be darker and the edges are highlighted. This completely ruined that. Then once that was done, I took XV88, and so what I did was I stippled on the most raised areas and the large flat areas, and I did a little bit of dry brushing to build a little bit of an edge on some of the bags and stuff. And then once that was done, I went with pure XV88 and I highlighted the edges of every bag, and I did my best to highlight the edges of the belts, top and bottom. Once that was done, I then took another wash of Rhinox Hide, much thinner, applied it all over, and fixed some details here and there, and then I did another re-highlighting, a very fine one on the most raised edges, prominent edges of the bags and stuff. And so yeah, and it adds texture to the leather and looks pretty decent. Alright, with Cadian Fleshtone, Nightquester Flesh, Screaming Skull, Agrax Roshade, and Dawnstone, we're going to begin the face, essentially. So, base layer of Cadian Fleshtone all over. Then, for the various details and stuff, I create a wash with Nightquester Flesh. Now, because of how thin it was, and because the color is a bit similar to Cadian Fleshtone, I applied actually 4 layers of this wash, and I let it mostly dry naturally without a hair dryer. And yeah, and then I went back and re-highlighted with Cadian Fleshtone. Now what I do first for highlighting is I highlight the most obvious things like the eyebrows, the nose, the lips, the high cheekbones, the jawline, the sides of the head skull thing, kind of hard to say. And then I feathered in, like, feathering in is just basically like painting lines one after another, like right next to each other. Paint vertical lines one after another like an assembly line. Sort of feathers it and helps blend it a bit. And once that was done, I took Cadian Fleshtone Screaming Skull, mixed a little bit of Screaming Skull into the Cadian Fleshtone, and re-highlighted the most prominent edges, and then feathered it in a bit along the head and stuff to help with blending. Then I repeated the same process again with even more Screaming Skull on the most prominent areas. More Screaming Skull into the Cadian Fleshtone. And once I was done, I went back with another wash of Nightquester Brown, just lightly, and I put little dots of it in like the base of his cheekbones or other places, and then I like moved it around with my brush so it would blend in with the colors to help with the transition of color a little bit. Then I used some watered down Agrax Earthshade to darken his mouth, the inside of his mouth, as well as just a little bit on his eyes, his eyelids and stuff, to make them more prominently distinct. And once that was done, I then took Dawnstone, watered it down a lot, and applied it onto his face, and then off camera I did that onto the top of his head to make it look like a 5 o'clock shadow, basically. And once that was done, I went back with Cadian Fleshtone Screaming Skull with a little bit more Screaming Skull than before, and then just a few dots of it on the most prominent areas, the edges of his eyes, nose, and stuff like that. Alright, and then with Xandri Dust and Zamasi Desert, I decided to make him blonde because I'm not 100% sure, but I think they are all blonde, or I don't know, I think there might be some with like dark hair and stuff, but basically Xandri Dust is a base, and then I stipple on Zamasi Desert on top, and that adds more texture. Yeah, stippling does add a good amount of texture and blending. He is pinned to his base and glued on, as well as finally assembling him. Arms all together onto his body, his head, and his shoulder pads are added later. Now I take something called microset, and the model did not come with a transfer sheet, but I still have some transfer sheets from previous projects, and so I took a Blood Angel one and applied it onto him. Essentially, coat the area in microset, apply the transfer, apply microset on top, softens it, and once it dries, I used a hairbrush, hair dryer to help quickly heat it up and stuff, and it adhered and curved pretty well. Alright, with Army Painter Anti-Shine Matte Varnish and AK Interactive Ultra Matte Varnish, I then seal the model. So the first thing I do is I take the Anti-Shine Matte Varnish, I apply a little bit of water to it so it doesn't whiten the model, and I apply this on the decal. I do around 2 layers of this. A hair dryer helps rapidly speed it up, because if I do the AK Interactive, it'll be chalky underneath the transfer. And so I was hoping this would seal it in with 2 layers, make it so that the AK Interactive Matte Varnish would not come in. It didn't work. So the decal looks perfectly on there, and then I took Ultra Matte Varnish, I watered it down a bit, almost 50-50-ish to get rid of the whitening, and then I applied like 2 coats all over. And once that was done, the decal had some whitening around it for like little gaps and stuff. That was irritating. And so basically I applied some Anti-Shine Matte Varnish onto it again, just a little bit, only directly onto the decal to get rid of the whitening. And done. This was a good practice and exercise. Thank you, GW. Wow. Who said that? Thanks for the free model after robbing me blind at the countertop. Essentially, this was a good practice I wanted to try the stippling because I seen that it's good for blending and it adds texture. But it's also pretty quick in comparison, but I wonder if my brush could be just as fast. Maybe. This slows me down a bit because I do have to be careful not to spill over onto the surrounding areas after the first couple of layers of paint are down. Overall, it was a nice fun practice, but man, I barely had enough time to get this done. I never realized how little time I actually have for painting nowadays. The only reason I was able to get this out so quickly, this single model out so quickly, is because there was like this tropical storm and I got out of work for 2 days, which they only let me know about much later into the day, so I was ready and willing. I didn't get to sleep in or enjoy myself, but essentially, only because of a tropical storm gave me so much more time off of work. I work outdoors, that's why. And I would have been able to do this in time, because this did take a lot of time of back and forth of me trying to figure out what to do, because these are new techniques to me. I'm not fully familiar how they can work implemented with what I previously do, try to make sense. So there's a bit of back and forth. Overall, the model, so the big wins, there are some big wins with this. So armor, Space Marine armor is a bit difficult because it's a bunch of flat, round planes and stuff. So unless you have an airbrush, color transitions are a bit difficult to do. But with this stippling, I was able to easily, with my hands, do much better, more controlled color transitions. And it looks like there's more texture, there's more character to it. The leather on the models, even though it's small and subtle, you can see that there is a bit more to it. It feels like there's more life to it. The cloth, the pants, looks incredible. That's the best thing about this, because the stippling really brings out the individual fibers, it looks like. Like your mind fills in the gaps and makes it look like they're fibers. The boots turned out very, very well. There is texture, there's detail. Now, I did not give this guy battle damage or dirting or anything, but yeah. There are a few details I didn't go over, like, cannot remember what oh yeah, the earpiece on the side of his head and this hose thing out in front on top of his eagle. Is just like, it's the exact same colors as the gun and the boots. That's it, just rearranged a bit differently. As far as that goes, the face, that was actually really well done. It came out really well, very simple. The color transitions is great, the highlights is great, 5 o'clock shadow is great. One thing though, so as far as decals, so I looked it up. So apparently the Scout company, the insignia for being in the Scout company would be on their right shoulder pad, I believe, and it is a big black dot with a single blood teardrop on there. And after all the work I did to get the shoulder pad done, and I was like in a time crunch, which I still missed the deadline. Well, my self-imposed deadline. I just like didn't want to risk it, so It's a black dot with a single teardrop in it for the Scouts company. So, yeah, well, yeah. So a nice practice. I genuinely enjoyed this. This was a nice little simple relaxing thing, and I really like how there wasn't like a crap ton of detail on this. It's just a scout, just a trooper. I mean, he does technically have a lot of detail, but he looks good. My eyes can't detect what the pictures really see that well, but yeah, looks good. The gun looks pretty good. The gun barrel, not as much, but it's an attempt. It's a learning attempt. I probably would have like more gray on it. I don't know how to describe it, so never mind. Yeah, but overall, it's a good first attempt, really focusing on stippling. There's a lot of advantages to it. It adds a lot of character and texture to the Space Marine armor, which is just flat planes of nothing. Yeah, a good model, good practice. I'm surprised that GW was giving away free models. I texted my brothers once I found out about it, and then I messaged them. They're like, oh yeah, they've been doing this for a while. Last month was like Deathwing Knights. Like, how did I not know about this? Alright, anyway. So, thanks for watching the video. So, like the video if you like the video, share if you want to share, comment if you want to comment, and thanks to all who participated in the poll. It was like over 40 votes. I was very surprised. I expected like 3. So, thanks for that, and more to come. Bye.